Echoes call from hollow halls, a voice that creeps and softly crawls. Time stands still, the air is...
On the 8th of January 2022, what began as a perfect summer morning at Lake Furnace in Minas Gerais, Brazil, turned into pure chaos. Tourists were filming, laughing, and enjoying the sun, when suddenly, nature showed just how little warning it gives. Out of nowhere, a towering cliff face, solid rock that had stood for centuries, cracked apart and came crashing down on the boats below. 10 lives were lost, dozens more were injured, and the videos spread across the internet like wildfire, leaving millions speechless. But as disturbing as this footage was, it wasn't the only one. These are 6 of the most disturbing videos ever caught on camera. In the quiet, rural landscape of Van Buren County, Michigan, what began as a routine arrest became one of the most dangerous confrontations law enforcement had faced in years. On Friday, July 4th, 2025, deputies arrived with a simple objective. They had an arrest warrant. They knew where their suspect was.
Morgan Parish, Van Buren County Sheriff's Office. We have a search warrant for the property.
What they didn't know was that within moments, they would be fighting for their lives against explosive devices hurled from a barricaded RV. The multi-jurisdictional SWAT team made their approach just west of Kendall, Michigan, armed with legal authority and tactical training. Inside that RV sat a wanted fugitive facing serious charges. He had an active felony warrant out of St. Joseph County and was reportedly facing a return to prison for prior convictions. For him, this moment represented the end of the line. For the officers approaching that door, it represented an ordinary Friday that would transform into something horrifying. When deputies secured their search warrant and moved toward the RV door, ready to take the suspect into custody, something shifted. The man inside made a decision that would turn this standoff into a nightmare. He ignited an explosive device inside the vehicle. The blast erupted, sending flames through the interior of the RV. In what seemed like a calculated move, he quickly extinguished the fire. This wasn't panic. This was intent. This was a test. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, deputies immediately called for backup.
Stay. No, stay.
That's right. I need someone to shut down the Morgan Parish,
Kennel up for you. Under arrest. Stay.
The Kalamazoo bomb squad was summoned to the scene as tension escalated rapidly. Then came the threats. From inside that RV, the suspect began yelling with chilling clarity that he would shoot every officer on scene. Through the window, he held something that appeared to be a firearm. Law enforcement had crossed into unknown territory, where every second mattered, where every decision could mean life or death. What happened next demonstrated both the danger and the calculated desperation of a man with nothing left to lose. The suspect threw a pipe bomb directly at the deputies standing outside. The explosive was meant to kill them.
Stay back. Stay back. Subject 20 for the log bomb detonated.
801, just an FYI, he threw it in our direction. Put your hands up the door! Come on! Come on! Less lethal deployed. Another one! No! Get ready!
This wasn't a warning or a distraction. This was an attack. Officers shouted commands, their training kicking in as adrenaline flooded the scene. They deployed a second round of tear gas, trying to flush the suspect from his position and diminish his ability to continue his assault. Then, in a moment of apparent surrender, the RV door opened, but there was no surrender. The suspect emerged holding another explosive device, another attempt to inflict maximum damage on the law enforcement officers surrounding him. At this critical juncture, authorities made the decision to use less lethal force. Officers fired, striking the suspect with a less lethal weapon that allowed deputies to finally take him into custody alive. His body was removed from the scene and transported to a hospital for treatment of his injuries. Van Buren County Sheriff Daniel Abbott spoke to the reality of what had transpired. Nobody lost their life. The bad guy's in custody. Now he'll face charges and ultimately go back to prison for what he's done, he stated with visible relief. The officers who responded that day walked away without serious injury, a fact that Van Buren County Undersheriff Casey Davis credited to the intensive training his SWAT team undergoes. "This was definitely top 5 for me," Davis said of the incident. "Not only do you worry, the biggest thing is you worry about your officers and you worry about everybody that's on scene." Davis emphasized that tactical preparation made the difference between tragedy and survival. "All the officers are walking away today because of the intense training that our SWAT team goes through. The training paid off. That's exactly how it should have ended." The suspect now faced additional charges related to the explosive devices and threats made against law enforcement, in addition to the original felony charges on his warrant. He would be held at Van Buren County Jail, pending formal arraignment. What occurred in rural Michigan that July morning serves as a stark reminder of the unpredictable dangers law enforcement faces. Behind every door, every standoff, and every seemingly routine arrest lies the potential for violence.
Morgan Parish, Van Buren County Sheriff's Office. We have a search warrant for the property.
The Kendall RV standoff represents not just a dramatic confrontation between a desperate man and the system pursuing him, but a testament to the trained professionals who walked away alive. Before we go any further, I just want to ask you for a small favor. If you're enjoying the video so far, please give it a like. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time. We recently hit 100,000 subscribers, and that's all thanks to you. Our 100K special surprise was revealed, and we had many positive responses from you. Our next goal is to hit 200K before the year ends. It feels impossible, but hey, it's free to dream, right? Also, there's a hidden word somewhere in this video for you. Let's see if you can find it. Now, back to the video. In the sprawling grounds of Taipei Zoo in Taiwan's bustling capital, what unfolded on a Wednesday afternoon in November 2004 would become a haunting reminder of how quickly human intention can spiral into tragedy. A 46-year-old man named Chen, struggling with psychological difficulties and reportedly under the influence of alcohol, made a decision that would place him face to face with one of nature's most lethal predators. The zoo was operating normally that day, visitors moving through the exhibits in relative calm. Then came the moment when security barriers proved no match for desperation or delusion. Chen crossed the barbed wire fence that separated the walkway from the lion enclosure, breaching the carefully maintained boundary between the safe and the dangerous.
I saw and someone jumped into the den. I said, this is amazing.
There was no hesitation in his movements, no uncertainty in his intentions. What happened next was captured on television cameras, preserved forever as a record of human vulnerability meeting raw animal aggression. As two African lions rested beneath the shade of a tree, mere meters from where Chen stood, he began shouting with unmistakable clarity. His words carried the fervor of religious conviction mixed with something far more disturbing. "Jesus will save you," he called out to the massive cats, his voice carrying across the enclosure. But Chen's proclamation did not stop with preaching. With both hands raised in a gesture that seemed almost like an invitation, he shouted another phrase that sent chills through anyone witnessing it. "Come bite me," he declared, as if daring the lions to do exactly what they were born to do. The response was immediate and violent. One of the lions, a large male crowned with a shaggy mane, rose from his resting place. This was not curiosity. This was not play. The animal had assessed the intrusion, recognized the threat or opportunity before him, and acted with the pure instinct of a predator. The lion launched forward, his powerful body moving with terrifying speed. His teeth found purchase in Chen's right leg, sinking deep into flesh and bone. In those seconds, when a life balanced on the edge of death, zoo workers and security personnel mobilized with urgency. Water hoses were deployed, jets of pressure meant to disorient and drive away the attacking animal. Tranquilizer guns were readied by trained professionals, rounds fired into the massive cat's body in an attempt to sedate him and end the assault. The combination of water and sedation finally accomplished what human hands could not. The lion was driven away from Chen, who remained alive against all logical probability. The outcome could have been catastrophically different. Newspapers reporting on the incident noted a sobering reality. The lions had been fed earlier that day. Their hunger had been sated by routine meals in captivity. Had Chen's moment of madness occurred when the big cats were truly hungry? Had he trespassed into their domain without their bellies full, the story would likely have ended not with injury, but with death. The margin between his survival and his demise was measured in hours, and the proximity of feeding time. Chen's motivations remained complex and troubling. A man suffering from psychological illness and intoxication, his actions defied rational explanation. Was he seeking transcendence? Was he attempting to prove something to himself or others? Was mental illness the driving force, or was it the alcohol, or a combination of both? These questions would linger longer than the physical wounds he sustained. The Taipei Zoo incident stands as a visceral testament to the consequences of human impulse meeting natural law. It represents a moment when the carefully constructed barriers between civilization and the wild were crossed. When a man's convictions or his illness pushed him past the point of self-preservation. In those seconds of violence and terror, captured on camera for the world to witness, the outcome hung by the thinnest of threads. In the scenic canyons of Furnace Lake in Capitólio, Minas Gerais, Brazil, what began as an ordinary Saturday became a moment frozen in time between beauty and horror. On the 8th of January 2022, a natural disaster of shocking violence would transform a popular tourist destination into a scene of unimaginable tragedy. A massive column of rock, held together by geology and chance for countless years, suddenly surrendered to the forces that had been slowly weakening its grip. Furnace Lake itself was a creation of human engineering, formed in 1958 when the Furnace Dam was constructed to power a hydroelectric plant. Over 6 decades, it had become a celebrated tourist attraction, drawing visitors from across Brazil and beyond. The lake's canyons offered natural beauty that seemed timeless and stable. On this particular Saturday, approximately 5,000 visitors populated the area, many of them floating on leisure boats through the tranquil waters near the waterfall. The day was like countless others at Lake Furnace. Tourists drifted peacefully on pleasure boats, their cameras ready to capture the scenic landscape surrounding them. They had no warning, no indication that the geological formations they were admiring were on the verge of collapse. Then, in a moment that lasted only seconds, everything changed. A towering slab of rock, massive and ancient, broke free from the cliff face. The column descended with tremendous force, a geological event that seemed almost impossible as it unfolded before witnesses' eyes. Videos captured the moment. Tourists shouted in panic as the rock came crashing down, smashing directly onto 4 leisure boats. The impact sent massive waves across the lake's surface, the water rising and spreading out from the point of impact like the shockwave from an explosion. At least 10 people lost their lives in those catastrophic seconds. The death toll would eventually settle at 10, confirmed dead, though the identification process proved devastatingly difficult. Police Chief Marcos Pimenta described the challenge authorities faced when attempting to identify the victims. He noted the high-energy impact of the rock on the boaters had left the bodies severely damaged. Among those identified was 68-year-old Julio Borges Antunes, whose name would be added to a growing list of the deceased. One victim was identified as Vanessa Oliveira Ferreira, a 33-year-old mother who lost her 14-year-old son in the collapse. She was seen waiting at the Legal Medical Institute in Passos, Brazil, awaiting the release of her child's body so she could proceed with burial arrangements. The human cost of the disaster manifested not just in statistics but in the shattered lives of families left behind. More than 30 people sustained injuries ranging from serious to moderate. The rescue operation mobilized quickly. Firefighters from Minas Gerais, dive squads, and members of the Brazilian Navy rushed to Lake Furnace. Authorities searched the waters in case additional victims had been pulled under the surface or swept away. The work of rescue teams and divers continued as officials worked to account for everyone and identify the deceased. Officials investigating the disaster pointed to environmental factors that may have contributed to the collapse. Heavy rains had recently inundated the region, causing widespread flooding throughout Minas Gerais. The water saturation had displaced nearly 17,000 people from their homes. These heavy rains, officials suggested, could have weakened the structural integrity of the rock formation, gradually loosening its attachment to the cliff face until gravity finally won its ancient battle. The Capitolio area, with approximately 8,400 residents, typically experienced around 5,000 weekend visitors. The town could see as many as 30,000 visitors during holiday periods, making it a vital tourism hub for the region. The disaster struck at the heart of that tourist season, turning a place of joy and natural wonder into a scene of sudden, brutal tragedy. In those few terrible seconds, the lake that had brought leisure and beauty to thousands became a monument to nature's indifference and the fragility of human life. In the eastern neighborhoods of Cleveland, Ohio, on a Thursday morning in January 2017, a 14-year-old girl named Alana DeFries left her home with no idea that she would never return. Her disappearance would uncover a darkness so profound that it would shake an entire community and raise difficult questions about how predators move freely among society, even when they have already proven themselves monsters. Alana was not like other 14-year-old girls. She had a developmental disorder that significantly affected her ability to care for herself independently. Her world was one of simple routines and small comforts. She played with baby dolls, cared for her younger brother, and trusted the adults around her. She was vulnerable, and that vulnerability made her an easy target for someone like Christopher Whitaker. On the morning of January 26th, Donisha Cooper, Aliana's mother, watched her daughter leave for school as she did every other day. Aliana caught the 6:45 a.m. bus on East 149th Street north of Kinsman Avenue, heading toward her classes. It was a routine she had followed without fail, but this Thursday morning would be different. This Thursday morning, a predator was waiting. When 4 p.m. arrived and Aliana had not walked through the front door, Donisha called the school. The response sent ice through her veins. Aliana had never shown up for classes, despite having an exemplary attendance record and never missing a single day without prior notification. The school had never contacted Aliana's mother to let her know her daughter was absent. The delay was critical.
Cleveland 911 dispatcher, Alana, good evening. Please fire ambulance. I just want to report a missing child. How old is the child? 14. What's the child's name? Aliana DeFries. I put her on the RTA this morning. I put her on the bus to school. She never checked in for school. And she never made it to school this morning at all? No. Has she ever done this before? No. She's ever ran away before or did this, nothing like this before? No. Okay. She's trying to get his own car over to you now. Okay. Okay, thank you. All right, bye-bye.
By the time authorities began their search, 10 hours had already passed since Aliana was last seen alive. Police obtained surveillance footage from businesses throughout the area, trying to trace her movements. They discovered that Aliana had boarded the bus at the scheduled time and got off at East 93rd and Kinsman Avenue to transfer to a second bus, but she never made it onto that second bus. Footage showed a man walking up and down the street. When Aliana appeared on the camera, she took 2 steps backward as the man approached her. Then he followed her. Three days after Aliana was reported missing, police entered an abandoned house. The structure was dark, without electricity, so officers brought light with them to navigate the interior. What they found would be forever seared into their memories. Bloody footprints marked the floors. Blood smeared across walls told a story of violence. In a bedroom, they discovered a training bra, a ripped black school sweater, a single black shoe, and a torn condom wrapper. And then they found Aliana. She was naked, lying in a pool of blood in the corner of the bedroom. Her body bore the evidence of unimaginable brutality. She had been beaten, raped, and tortured. Tools had been used as weapons against her. A drill, a screwdriver, a hammer, a box cutter. The injuries were so severe that the medical examiner could not determine with certainty which wound had finally taken her life. One of her eyes had been dislodged from its socket. Wounds on her face and head matched the tools found near her body. Slash wounds covered her neck in such quantity that they could not be counted. The medical examiner testified that, based on the signs of healing on many of the wounds, Alana had survived this horrific violence for at least several hours before she was ultimately murdered. The man seen on surveillance footage was identified as Christopher Whitaker. When police questioned him, he initially denied any knowledge of Alana, claiming he only knew about her from news reports. He said he had been doing drywall work in the area the day she went missing. When pressed about the abandoned house, he claimed he had only been there days before to scrap metal with someone he called Boogie. His story unraveled quickly when DNA evidence linked him to items found inside the house and on Alana's body. When police confronted him with the DNA evidence and asked how his son was found inside Alana's body, if he had never met her, Christopher's response was chilling. "I'm a crackhead. I get high and do stupid shit for money," he said. He then changed his story, first claiming he only masturbated while two other men assaulted her, then changing it again to claim consensual sex. During questioning, he asked for water and told police that he just wants to die right now. What authorities would later discover made the crime even more sinister. Christopher Whitaker was already a registered sex offender. In 2005, he had called a 45-year-old woman repeatedly throughout the night, asking to use her restroom at the Trinity Towers apartment complex in Bedford Heights. When she allowed him inside, he choked her unconscious. He sexually assaulted her as she lay helpless. He stabbed her twice in the neck with scissors. The system had already identified him as dangerous, as predatory, yet he remained free to hunt again. At trial, prosecutor Mahmoud Awadallah presented the tools of torture to the jury. One by one, they saw how the drill matched puncture wounds to Alana's cheek and forehead. They saw how the box cutter matched the countless slash wounds to her neck. The evidence was overwhelming and indisputable. Christopher's defense attorney did not contest the charges. They called no witnesses. Their focus was solely on the penalty phase, hoping to convince jurors that their client deserved anything less than death. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. They found Christopher guilty on all 10 charges. They recommended death. Judge Carolyn Friedland, presiding over the case, agreed with their recommendation. She sentenced Christopher Whitaker to death, plus an additional 48 years in prison for related convictions. The circumstances that Christopher's attorneys presented to convince jurors to spare his life pale in comparison to the barbarity of the evidence of what he did to the girl. Alana's mother, Donasha Cooper, issued a statement that captured the anguish of losing a child to such violence. "I appreciate the jury for making their judgment and recommendation, but death is too good for him, and I won't believe he has any remorse until he suffers like my daughter suffered. His apology means nothing to me." Alana's grandmother spoke with even greater clarity about the nature of her granddaughter's killer. She said, "I can see the evil that's in him, and we have to tell everybody, this is what evil looks like." Alana DeFries was 14 years old. She was vulnerable. She was innocent. She played with baby dolls and cared for her younger brother. She trusted the world around her, and the world failed her catastrophically. Not just in the moment Christopher Whitaker targeted her, but in the years before, when a system designed to protect society allowed a registered sex offender to walk free, to prey, to hunt, and ultimately to murder a child who had done nothing to deserve such a fate. In the early hours of a Tuesday morning in May 2023, a dashcam captured footage that would expose a carefully orchestrated scheme unfolding on the deserted roads of Browns Plains, Queensland. At around 3 a.m., when most honest citizens were asleep in their beds, a group of individuals was executing what appeared to be a coordinated scam that blended elements of insurance fraud, carjacking, and extortion into one sinister operation. The footage begins innocuously enough. A lone driver navigates the quiet streets of Browns Plains, traveling through an area that few people would be awake to witness. The road is empty. The night is dark. Then, without warning, a woman appears on the road ahead. She doesn't gradually step into traffic. She doesn't appear confused or distracted. Instead, she runs deliberately onto the deserted asphalt, directly into the path of the oncoming vehicle. Her actions are deliberate. They are calculated. This is no accident. The driver, alert and aware, immediately applies the brakes. The vehicle slows, but the pedestrian does something that transforms this moment into something far more sinister. Rather than flee from the oncoming car, she throws herself onto the hood of the vehicle and then tumbles onto the road. The impact is captured clearly on the dashcam footage. To any observer unfamiliar with what was about to unfold, it would appear to be a tragic hit-and-run accident. The driver had hit a pedestrian. But what happened in the seconds following the impact revealed the true nature of this crime. Several people, having been concealed or waiting in the darkness, suddenly rushed from behind the vehicle toward the fallen woman. These were not concerned bystanders rushing to help an injured person. Their emergence was too coordinated, too immediate, too organized. They appeared from positions that suggested they had been waiting, watching, anticipating the moment of impact. The driver, watching this unfold through their windshield, recognized immediately what was happening. This was a setup. This was a crime in progress. The driver's dashcam footage from Dashcam Owners Australia noted, there were several people approaching from behind the vehicle instantly after the incident. The driver fled due to risk of carjacking or suspecting a fraudulent claim at 3 a.m. in Browns Plains. The assessment was clear and likely accurate. This was not simply an insurance fraud scheme. This had the hallmarks of something more dangerous, something more predatory. The driver made a decision that likely saved them from further victimization. Rather than remain at the scene, uncertain of what would unfold next, the driver reversed away from the pedestrian and the group gathering around her. Then, the vehicle accelerated, moving around the assembled individuals and fleeing to safety. The driver's instinct to protect themselves had overridden any initial guilt or shock at having struck a pedestrian. That instinct may have prevented a far worse outcome. What this driver had witnessed was a carefully constructed criminal conspiracy. The woman on the road was a plant, deliberately positioned to ensure vehicle impact. The group of people emerging from the darkness were accomplices, part of a coordinated team designed to capitalize on that impact. The script likely called for the driver to remain at the scene, shocked and concerned about the injured woman. It probably anticipated that the gathering group would produce claims of injuries requiring immediate compensation, possibly even demands for cash payments to avoid police involvement or threats of lawsuits. The scheme represents a growing criminal enterprise in Australia. The Insurance Fraud Bureau of Australia estimates that fraudulent claims cost insurance companies approximately $2.2 billion every year. These organized schemes are particularly sinister because they put innocent drivers at risk. The fraudsters have no concern for the safety of their victims. They don't care if the sudden braking causes a chain reaction collision. They don't care if the driver suffers trauma or injury from the impact. All they care about is the payout that might result from their manufactured crisis. The driver's decision to flee may have prevented them from becoming entangled in a web of false claims, lawsuits, and criminal involvement. Their dashcam footage served as incontrovertible evidence of what actually transpired, documenting the deliberate nature of the pedestrian's entry into traffic and the coordinated response of the waiting accomplices. In a world where insurance fraud schemes operate with increasing sophistication, that dashcam footage was the driver's protection, their witness to the truth, their escape from victimization. On Tuesday morning, May 18, 2021, the streets of West Pensacola, Florida, were quiet and seemingly safe. Families were beginning their daily routines. Children were preparing for school. It was just before 7 a.m., and an 11-year-old girl stood waiting at her bus stop, unaware that a predator had already locked onto her as his target. The girl was sitting on her knees, waiting for the school bus to arrive, when a white Dodge Journey pulled up near the bus stop. Surveillance video captured the moment a man exited the vehicle and began moving toward her with unmistakable intent. He was armed with a knife. This was not someone in crisis. This was not someone confused or lost. This was a predator executing what he had planned. He charged at the child with the calculated aggression of someone who believed he would succeed. The girl's instinct kicked in immediately. She grabbed her backpack and ran, but the man was faster. He caught her, seizing her in what surveillance cameras recorded as a violent encounter. For those watching the footage later, every second would stretch into an eternity of fear. Would he take her? Would she be lost forever? Would she become another statistic, another missing child, another tragedy that might never be solved? But the 11-year-old girl refused to surrender. She fought. She kicked and struggled with a desperation that only someone fighting for their own life can summon. The surveillance video shows her breaking free from his grip, escaping from his hands through sheer determination and will. The man, suddenly facing resistance where he had anticipated compliance, made a decision. He retreated. He ran back to his vehicle and fled the scene, leaving the girl standing there traumatized but alive. The Escambia County Sheriff's Office released the surveillance footage to the public, asking for help identifying the suspect. But they would not wait long. Within hours of the public appeal, deputies had arrested a man named Jared Paul Stanga. He was 30 years old, and his history was darker than most could have anticipated. Escambia County Sheriff Chip Simmons held a press conference to discuss Stanga's arrest. What he revealed sent chills through the community. Stanga had a history of sexual offenses. More troublingly, his prior offenses included sexual crimes against children. Jared Paul Stanga was charged with attempted kidnapping of a child under 13, aggravated assault and battery. The charges reflected the severity of what had occurred in those frightening seconds on the street corner in West Pensacola. He had attempted to take a child at knife point in broad daylight. He had attempted to abduct her with no apparent regard for who might witness him or what might happen to the child once he had her. The girl's courage in those moments became the subject of widespread recognition. A prosecutor involved in the case later stated, what so many understood to be true. Had this 11-year-old victim not thought to fight and to just never give up, then this could have ended terribly. The words were simple but carried the weight of every child who had not escaped, every parent's worst nightmare, every abduction that had ended in tragedy. This girl had done what so many children are taught, but so few ever have to employ. She had fought. She had refused to be victimized. She had saved her own life. The surveillance footage became critical evidence in the case, allowing authorities to identify and apprehend Stanga quickly. But beyond the legal implications, the video served as a stark reminder of the dangers that lurk in plain sight. A child waiting for her school bus in the early morning. A man willing to commit abduction and assault in broad daylight. A moment that could have ended in tragedy, but instead ended in survival because one 11-year-old girl refused to give up. The community of West Pensacola had witnessed the attempted theft of a child, but they had also witnessed the power of a child's will to survive, to fight and to escape from evil that had arrived in a white vehicle on an ordinary Tuesday morning. And that brings us to the end of this episode. If you found this video informative, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss what we drop next. We cover stories like this almost every day, and trust me, you don't want to be left behind. If you can't wait until the next upload, there are more videos popping up on your screen in just a few seconds. Click one and keep watching. Until then, take care. I'm out.